is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 311, otherwise known as 311.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Sherri Mazza.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. It pains me to say this, but I think I've been in a customer-facing role for around since 2009, carry the one, that's 15 years. And I spent 4 of them, or 6 of them as an SE, and the last, since 2021, last 3 years as a solution specialist, aka salesperson. And I have done 2 types of sales training. I've done solution selling, and I have done challenger sales. I hated challenger sales. I found it completely useless. And I will debate anyone who wants to debate about it. I love solution selling. I'm not going to get into the details between like why I hate challenger sales. If you want to have a discussion, we can have that at a later date. But bottom line is there are so many different sales methodologies, from starting off as product sales, where, you know, if someone's selling a car, they're selling a product, or someone selling a license for Microsoft Outlook, it's selling a product, all the way to value selling, which was the latest thing for the last few years. And the reason they developed, like we went product sales, solution selling, spin selling, value selling. I'm not even going to mention challenger sales. I just did. The reason we had that is because customers change, the way they do things change, the technology changes. So we need more and more or different ways of doing things. And now the latest one is insight selling. And one thing I've noticed is most books or methodologies are sales oriented. This is what salespeople should do. And they forget to mention the SE, which is why I'm happy to have Sherri Mazza as my guest today, who is a solutions engineer manager and is writing a book about insight selling for sales engineers or solutions engineers. And we talk about the history, we talk about the book, why she's writing the book, and why insight selling is important. So if you just want to hear that and not hear me talk, let's just jump into the show and start having that discussion. Sherri, welcome back. So we're in like good 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then some technical issues. Is it okay if we call it technical issues happen?
It happens.
Yeah. And now we're restarting. So I'm happy to have you on the show. I mentioned that you've written a book, which is most likely a labor of love.
Yes.
And before we talk about the book, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Sherri Mazza. I'm currently a solutions engineering manager. But I started my career 20 some years ago as a Unix admin. When I was it was like around 1995, and I was working as a Unix admin for a small company in Baltimore called PHH, where I managed several servers and in a data center. And then from there, I went to another company called advertising.com, where I actually managed the data center, and I managed a few people at the same time. And we grew the environment from 30 servers to over 200 servers, supporting the advertising business. Nice. Then I went to a company called Sienna, and Sienna was a optical networking company, and I managed their finance data center and some of their development, where the developers did their data centers. Did their development. I managed those data centers. And I had, because of being in the data center and working alongside of a lot of vendors, one vendor came to me one day. He was from Sun Microsystems, and he said to me, you know, you've been selling to your executives for the last, I don't know how many years. Wouldn't you like to get paid for it? And I thought, wow, that's a novel idea.
And you said no, and you kept going on with your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It came at a time when it was really, I was a new mom, and my kids were really little, and I hated having to leave them in the middle of the night to, you know, change a diaper, get up, drive over to the, the company that I was working for, bring a server up, come back, see the baby again, change a diaper, go back to sleep for 5 minutes, wake up again. So it came at a really good time. And so that started my career when I was at Sun Microsystems as an SE, and then went to Oracle when, Sun was purchased by Oracle, was an SE there, and then moved into an SE manager's role. Worked for a company called Talus eSecurity, which was all around securing data through encryption, tokenization, key management, things like that. And then most recently, I was at VMware as an SE manager and managed a territory from like Virginia down to Florida, managing a group of SEs for VMware.
I just realized that I've been saying Talus wrong for all of my career. I keep calling it Fails for some reason.
Yes, the H is silent because it's French.
Okay.
That's what they told me.
Sure. All right, we'll go with that. So your title wasn't solutions engineer though at Sun Microsystem.
No, we were called, what were we called? Engagement
Systems
architects, I believe.
Well, on your LinkedIn, it's systems engineers.
Oh, we were systems engineers. It might have been at Oracle, we were engagement architects, which was kind of funny. When I would tell people, my friends, that I was an engagement architect, they actually thought I meant like engagement rings, like, what are you working on? So it was a really weird time, but yeah.
Yeah. But you were also, like you mentioned early on, you were a data center manager, which
Yes.
included managing the data center.
Yes.
And people.
Yes.
Like, how did you know like you're going to be good at managing people? Because I find that to be hard.
Well, the weird thing is how I got there. I actually managed people in an earlier career at McDonald's. Okay. And so, you kind of pick up things. So it was, that's actually how that happened.
Okay. All right. Well, actually, I want to dig into that. Like when you worked at McDonald's, because a lot of people look down at people working at McDonald's. Oh, you're working at a fast food chain, or you're working in Canada, Tim Hortons. Like, did they teach you about leadership? How did you learn how to manage those people?
Oh yeah, no, they send you to school to learn about all kinds of things, and one of them is how to lead people, and you either you're either able to lead people or you're not, right? Like some people have that personal skill that they can lead people. Some people are better, I believe, like they have other leadership skills, like maybe thought leadership. But yeah, I mean, early on, I found out that I was pretty good at managing people, and so that got me through school, and
nice.
Then yeah.
So, what was that skill? You said some people have that skill to lead people. Like,
I think it's just the ability. Yeah, I think it's the ability to actually work with people and have a just have a camaraderie with people, but also be able to share your knowledge with them and share empathy with them. I mean, I think there's a lot of things involved in leadership, right? I can't.
Okay. It's not just ordering them what to do, because that sounds like fun to me. That tells you something. All right. So, systems engineer, and you were a manager at Oracle, also a manager at VMware.
Yes.
Did you see there's a difference in managing in one company versus another, or is it all the same?
I mean, I tend to manage people pretty much the same way. I believe that everybody should be collaborative, be results driven, and really be adaptive. I always tell that to people. It's like, be flexible, be adaptive, right? The companies were different, absolutely different. They had different expectations, but my leadership style has always been being very collaborative.
Okay. And was your leadership style ever affected by your leader's leadership style? And did that change the way your leadership style was?
I've had some really great leaders in my in my career, and I've kind of adapted a little bit from every single one of those leaders. One leader, he would always make sure that everybody in the team had a voice, and so I've taken that little piece out of him to and brought that into my leadership style, making sure everybody feels like they have a voice. um, you know, it's kind of, you kind of build up into the leader that you want to be. You don't start out kind of being like the best leader, but you pick and choose leaders that have been in your life, and you take from that, I think.
That's fine. You don't start off as the best leader, which is everyone who starts sales engineering, they expect to be great at day one and through our career. But yeah, you're gonna suck for a while. Uh, I know this is not the topic of conversation, but I am very curious. You said a lot. I hear a lot of leaders saying like, "Oh, everyone should have a voice. Make sure everyone has a voice." How does one make sure? Like, what's the tactical process of making sure everybody has a voice?
Oh, well, I think there's a couple of things you could do. I mean, always, I tend to hold one-on-ones so that they can feel like they can have a conversation with me, and they could do it in a space that feels safe. And then when we're doing team meetings, I also make sure that everybody feels safe to have it, to express their concerns or express whatever it is they're thinking at that time in the team meeting as well, so that they can get the energy from their teammates to figure out whether or not they need to either solve a problem, or they're trying to fix something, or to that effect, right? Like it's those are the types of things that I used to do.
It's funny because we there was just a post yesterday on LinkedIn about one-on-ones, and I disagree with it 100% because it was all about like what. Let's talk about the next deal. Let's talk about the next funnel and all that. No one talked about like giving someone a voice. Um,
Yeah.
so
So
how
I
did
don't
you?
think one-on-ones should be talk. You should talk about deals during a one-on-one. That's their time to talk to you and
Mhm.
share with you what their aspirations are, whether or not you know whether it's a development thing, or if they want to talk about what they're working on in the sales process. That's fine, but I kind of leave it to them to because it's their time with me to share whatever they want.
That's interesting, and I agree with you 100%. But playing devil's advocate, then at what point should you talk about the business? Because
Oh,
in the
well,
end,
there's
that's what's
another call
important.
for that. Like I would have a forecast call for that.
Okay, so there's a
And then
forecast
we have it.
call.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But
okay,
one-on-ones,
so
I try to keep those very, it's not necessarily personal, but I kind of want to understand what's going on in their world, and how can I help them? How can I help them with whatever, if they're having a problem, or how can I help them reach a goal that they want to get to?
okay, what if their goal is not congruent with the company goal or your goal? Because you have goals that for the team. How do you handle that? Yeah,
So,
that's a big. I like that's a big fear. That's like when I talk to people. That's one of the main reasons they don't talk to their managers because they're worried about their goal or what they want. Let's say they want to go into sales or they want to move to a different team is will affect the manager negatively. How do good managers handle that?
oh, well, a good manager shouldn't see that as a bad thing, right? If they want to go into sales, or they want to go into a different organization, you should help them get there. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I mean, it's about growth. The fact that you're able to help another person as a leader grow or move into something differently, that's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah,
I think that's
no,
positive.
I 100% agree with that. And my current manager is exactly like that, but I've had
Yeah.
some other managers who try to do the
Oh,
exact opposite.
oh yeah,
Uh, so
yeah. I've seen that
okay,
happen too.
yeah, well, we're all human, so everybody has their own way of doing things. But here's
Absolutely.
my question about this: have any of your SEs ever asked you about your book?
Um, some of them are actually in the book. They just don't know it.
All right, well, tell me about the book. One, why did you
So
write one?
I'm writing a book. It's called Unlocking Pre-Sale Success: The Insight Selling Methodology for Solution Engineers. And it's really all about showing solution engineers how they can use insight selling to drive larger deals. Because I was a lot of time over the last few years, I've been on the enterprise teams. And so we're always looking for the larger deals and engaging in a long-term, the long-term sales cycle, right? Like, what's the next thing 18 months out? We're going to close this, but what's the next thing 18 months out? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what the book's about.
Okay. Let's define insight selling, and then I want to you sent me the first 2 chapters, and I went through them, and you have a nice history of some of not all the methodologies, but some of the most famous
Yeah.
methodologies for sales. What is insight selling?
So insight selling focuses on delivering valuable insights to your customer. It's putting aside that product sale, the initial product sale, and just going in there and trying to sell something right away, and educating them on an insight, understanding what their needs are, understanding what their challenges are, and really and talking to them about an insight that they might not have thought of. And one of the quotes that I love that one of my old bosses used to say, he said, it's about inserting something into their agenda that they weren't even considering, but demands their attention, and then we influence them to take action on it. And I love that quote that he would say. And so because of that, I have that up on my wall. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna dig into insight selling in a second. Whenever you say like there's solution selling, right? We're gonna
Yes.
talk. Whenever there's like the word selling, I find most SEs check out. We were forced to go into solution selling training way back when. Right now
Yes.
in my company, they're forced to go into challenger selling. So now the fact that you're saying, oh, SEs are part of insight selling is kind of contradictory to some people. At least not the people listening to this podcast, but those who are not listening, don't want to learn. So why should, well, I guess that's chapter 2, but why should SEs care?
Well, they should care because in the end, they're going to solve a problem for their customer, and they're going to see a really big paycheck in the end.
There you go.
Right.
Not as big as sales, but still big.
Yeah. Not as big as sales, but still they'll do pretty well. And I think, it goes back to, and you read the first couple of chapters. There are methodologies that came before insight selling, right?
Yeah.
The first one was all product centric. And that was like, I want to say in the mid 50s, 60s, the early 20th century, right? And then we moved into solution selling. And solution selling is a lot older than you might think. It's actually from the 70s, late 70s. And that's when, companies realized that they needed to be able to solve a solution, right? To do the solution selling. And that's kind of when the SEs were kind of started to get brought in. After that came relationship selling and the notion of being a trusted advisor, right? And that's when SEs really got their challenge, right? And that came around, that was from like the 1980s to the 1990s. Soon after that was value selling. And I think a lot of companies have really adopted value selling, right? What's the value of why that company needs to have your particular product, right? How do you build in value to it? And then in 2010, 2015, that insight selling came in. And in between there were some other ones, the challenger sale, a couple of other ones in between, but those were the big ones that kind of led up. Yeah.
Okay. So in my head, when someone says solution sale and value sale, in my head, they mean the same thing, right? Because if there is no value, if there is no solution, and there is no solution if there is no problem, and having a good relationship with the customer will allow you to share that information. So what is the actual difference? Because I've never read the book about value selling. I've only read solution selling, and I've had to read challenger sales. I've read spin selling by choice. What are the differences between value selling versus solution selling that made it a completely different selling style?
Solution selling wasn't much different to me than product selling. Okay. You came in with a solution that you believed could solve their problem, but did it bring value? I tell a story in the book about one of my first times I ever went to see a customer, and we were presenting our solution. And we were so excited about this solution that we had. And really it was, I was working at Sun Microsystems at the time. It was this big humongous server that was, like had 56 gigs of memory and could hold 16 CPUs and had, I don't know how many trays of disk in it. And we boasted the fact that it had a CD-ROM and it had a tape drive in it, right? So we were really excited, and we finished up that presentation with all of our excitement. And the customer just looked at me and said, "Technology without solving a business problem shows no value."
Yeah.
And that rang so true with me that day that I still have that up on my wall. I see you have something taped up on your wall. I have that taped up on my wall, because for every engagement I ever go into from that point forward, it had to show value.
Okay. So I maybe I saw solution selling differently because I was never, I guess, well, maybe I was part of product selling, but solution selling for me was you have to identify the problem and then sell the solution, not offer a solution with no problem.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I guess that's not how it was written back in 1980 or something.
1970s.
I remember Brian Tracy. I was listening to an audiobook of his, and he was talking about. I was just getting into sales as a sales engineer, and he was talking about someone selling a piece of glass, and the way he sells it is like he walks up to someone, bangs a hammer on the glass, it doesn't break, sells a whatever amount, and then he
Right.
taught that to everybody else. And the next step was he goes over and gives the hammer to the person who then whacks it and still doesn't break, and now he sold more than anybody else. That's what I see as product selling.
Okay.
Well, are you familiar with the SMP method?
No.
Spray and pray.
What? Say it again.
Spray and pray. So I had to make it sound fancy because that's what I did for the first few years. So that's product selling for me. It's like you just show them a product and then they kind of pick from a catalog and solve their own problem.
Yeah. I guess you're right. Yeah.
Okay. So, but what is value selling specifically?
So value selling is really around coming up with understanding what the value brings to the customer, right? Like, what's that value? Like, I would ask my team all the time, like, what value do we have over over a competitor to solve their problem? And so to me, that's what value selling is.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily feature wise, because I've asked that question to our SEs. They say we have more X. I'm like, okay, do the customers care?
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we identify the value then, if it's not just additional features?
So sometimes it's features, and sometimes it's what the problem that they're trying to solve. Do we solve that problem faster? Do we solve that problem do we solve it more efficiently than somebody else? Do we, things like that? I think that's really around what value selling is about.
How long has value selling been around?
Value selling came up around the early 2000s.
Okay, so it's been around for a while.
Yeah, about 20 years now. Yeah,
I'm way behind.
It's surprising to me, right? Like, it surprises me how old these selling processes really are, right? I wouldn't have thought it.
Yeah. And like everyone talks about value selling as the end all be all of selling methodologies. Why do we need insight selling now?
So in this new phase of where we are in technology, a customer can go out and really research your products just as well as you can share that information, right? So it's really about bringing to them something that they didn't consider already. Maybe it's something industry standard, like it's something in the industry. Maybe it's it's something that their competitors are doing. So it's about bringing something insightful to them versus just talking to them about a product. Because honestly, IT folks are pretty savvy. they could go look up your stuff and they could figure out what the features are and what the benefits are of those features for their environment. It is our job now as solutions engineers to take those features and functionalities and turn it into something insightful for them.
I have a million thoughts going through my head right now, because like I agree, IT people are savvy and they know what they're doing. They know what they're talking. I think their biggest problem is trying to sell up the chain,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And that's, I guess, that's the benefit of Insight, because you're not only allowing, like, you're not building Insight just for them, but you're helping them build Insight to their
Yes. To their executive.
to their executives, kind of like what you were doing when you were Sienna.
Yeah.
Were you using Insight selling without knowing it's Sienna, or was it just product selling at the time?
I would have said I was doing some value selling back then, but I didn't know it, right? Like,
Right.
because I wasn't really selling, but I did put together pitches and I would explain to them, this is why we need this particular product. And I would work really closely with the vendors to help me, with that dialogue so that I could go back to my executives and say, this is why we need this. This is why this is important. And this is the value it's going to show in the end.
Okay. And as SEs, I haven't met a single SE who has free time. Right? We're all focused on either learning the product or working with the customers. Everyone's busy and overworked.
Yeah.
Where are they supposed to find these insights?
Well, so I mean, we're in an awesome time right now where you can use AI to help you develop insights. It's amazing to me how we can create, we could take information through ChatGPT or Bard or whatever, filter in what we want to talk about, and create a personalized or a tailored story for our customers that takes minutes, really.
Yeah, and in my world also, at least it works for me, is there are specialist teams
There are, yeah,
that have all the insights. So personally, like, as much as I think ChatGPT is great, sometimes it provides wrong information.
absolutely.
So I'm always worried about using them and trusting them.
Yeah.
But
You
I
trust and
know,
verify, right?
yeah, and I know the senior SEs that are specialists within our organization. They know everything. A lot of them are involved in the standard bodies. A lot of them are
Yeah.
involved with customers. Like I work. Sienna is one of my customers here in Ottawa.
Oh,
Right.
this is
I
small
have
world.
colleagues. Yeah, I have colleagues who help Sienna in the U.S. and we're sharing insight nonstop.
Yeah.
Right? This is what these guys are doing. This is what these guys are doing, and then we go help our clients here. And like, there's so many different ways that you don't. A lot of the excuses is like, well, I don't have time to do research. Like, don't do research. Send an email. Right? It's
I think it's part of our job nowadays to actually do that research. I mean, we need to focus in on all the customers. If you are dedicated to a specific customer account, I think we have to understand what their business is. And sometimes it's even just as important to know what their business is to their business, right? To their customers. And I think it's also really important for SEs to be super curious, and it doesn't just mean be curious about your own products, but be curious about your customers' products.
So here's the problem that I see. Like, I agree. Again, like, it's very hard not to agree. But a lot of SEs who have been doing this for a while, they were not hired specifically for that skill set. A lot of them were hired because they're very good technically
Yeah.
and they can solve problems, and they're treated more as like sales support or post sales support even. And now we're asking a bunch of SEs who've been doing it for like 20 years that way. And it's hard enough for SEs and sales engineers to sell to begin with. Right now, you're telling them to share insight and gather insight. How do you start gradually changing uh, like their view of sales engineering from systems engineering, which is what most people started as,
Yeah.
into sales engineering
Yeah.
or solution engineering?
I think it comes down to caring about what your customers' needs and wants are. And I don't think it's necessarily a, I don't think it lands just on the SE, right? It has to land on the entire sales team, whether it's the whether they call them a CE or an AE. Maybe it helps land on the business units, their sales folks. It lands on marketing to help you drive some of that stuff. It shouldn't be just on the SE, but the SEs have a knack, right? They're listening for solutions. They're listening for the value. And so this gives them the extra added ability to actually create something that's insightful for the customer. And they've probably been doing it this entire time. They just don't know it, right? Through use cases, through customer stories, through success stories, through, marketing information that they've seen, through conferences they've been in. They share that information with their customer. They don't realize they're doing it. They're sharing insights.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be a thing, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You're already doing something like that. Just now you're more conscious of it.
Yeah, you're just being more conscious of it. You're planting a seed. And I say this in the book. You can walk. It's like going into a park with a bag of seeds, right? And you start yelling at the birds and say, "Come get my seeds! Come get my seeds!" But if you sat down and you planted one little seed, the birds will come to you, right? You drop one little seed, the birds will come to you. And that's what insight selling is really about. It's about dropping a seed with, whether it's an executive at a company during a conference, or during a brief business meeting. You're dropping a seed for them to realize they need to take action on something, right? Something that was interesting.
So you just, first off, I've never done the seeds thing, but I know it works on my kids. Like, hey, come eat. No, here's a piece of food in front of me. I'm about to eat it. They want my food. Okay. The thought that's popping in my head right now is like, everything we do as SEs, or we talk about, at least in like the thought leadership world, it's like a formal process. But what you just said, it sounds like, okay, I just met someone and I threw out this thing, which then percolates. Like, it's meeting for coffee, or it's not necessarily a formal, I'm gonna go sit down and present this insight to my customer. It's more
It
of like,
can be.
hey, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be
It
that, but it also
sometimes,
can
but it
be,
doesn't have
have
to
you
be.
heard of this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It can be, but sometimes it's just that meeting that they used to call it an elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
Well, how much can you talk to your customer if you're stuck in an elevator from floor 1 to floor 5, that you could talk about, but instead of talking about your product, change it up to talking about what's going on in their industry.
Which, the way I view it, is talking about your product is selfish, and talking about the industry is helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a lot to think about today. I don't know if I like thinking, but it is what it is. How can SEs get better at it, though? I don't have the entire book, so buy the book, I guess.
Buy the book when it comes out. I'm hoping it'll be out sometime in April. There are a couple other really good books out there. There's an insight selling book by I don't know if I have Michael Schultz. He did a really great insight selling book. You could go online and look up some other insight selling books. There's another woman out there who's doing selling. It's what is hers? Hers is around oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm kind of blanking.
It's okay. Well, if you do recall, you can always send me a link and I can put it in the show notes.
It's called Naked Sales, and it's all around. It's not necessarily about insight selling, but it's about how. One second.
How design thinking reveals customers.
Yes. So there's some really great information in here on how to be empathetic and create insights through design thinking. But yeah, there's a lot of really great information out there. I just don't think a lot of people have adapted it yet.
Okay. So the one thing about, there's a lot of sales books out there.
Yes.
And there's like 5 SE books.
Yes.
And
that's why I focus this on solution engineering. Yeah.
So yeah, like that's why like I'm more interested in your book than these books. Although I think I learned a lot from these books. But how are SEs supposed to implement or get better at inside sales? If there's one,
Practice makes perfect.
what was that practice? If there's one thing they can do today to
Um,
improve that, what would it be?
uh, one of the biggest things you could do is just do homework on on the industry or a customer that you have, right? And create something out of that. Go out and do research on the industry. Go out onto probably your company's websites and find some use cases to adapt to that industry, and adapt that to that industry, and look for customer success stories within your own company, because your company probably has them out there, and start sharing them with your customer, and that will start that whole insight process. And so in the book we do have a framework in place. It's the first part is doing an exploratory type thing, and that's where you drop your first seed, and then um, you start having executive conversations. You tailor the conversations to that customer, and you get buy-in from the executives that you could that you they want to go forward. And then the second step is all around the evaluate. And evaluate is when you start working with your customer to um, collaborate on an end state, right? What that end state might look like, a future state architecture. And then the last piece is executing on that collaboration that you did. So presenting back to your customer and their executives of what that future state looks like that you built with your customer. So that's kind of a short version of what the book is really about.
Okay, so it's if I were to put it in my own words, like it starts with inside selling and kind of morphs into a collaborative sales process.
Yes.
And, but based on
All
the
based
insight
on
that
the
you
insights.
provided.
Yep.
So yeah, like
Yep.
okay, so the insight is the generator. It's like the engine that pushed it, or
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, nice. All right, well, we're about to jump into the not so fire round, Sherry. But before we get there, was there a question I was hoping I was going to ask you, which I did not?
Um, Hoping that you would ask me. I can't think of one right now. No.
Well, if you do message me, we'll do another show about that topic if you want. Um, all right. So, question number one: uh, what did you? I usually ask because you're an SE manager, what do you love about SE management? But because you wrote a book, what did you love about the book writing process?
Well, so I had all these ideas in my mind, that I've had in my mind for the last 5 years. Like I created this process for at VMware when I started there, and I had it all in my head, and I needed to get it out of my head and put it in on paper, right? Like I just so that was like it was kind of cathartic, right, to get it out on paper. Um, so that was the fun part. The hard part is actually writing it in a way that people understand what I'm talking about, like. You know?
Yeah, it's easy to do a brain dump.
Yeah,
It's like,
I just
yeah, it's
yeah.
good.
I was like type type type. Yes, okay. This is the process. We did this right, and then putting content around everything that's in my brain that sounds like something somebody might want to read.
It's funny because I'm like I mentioned this. I'm writing a book,
Yeah,
and I finished the first draft, if you want to call it
yeah.
that. I sent it to my wife, and she came back to me for like half hour, asking me questions, and I'm like, "Babe, that's still the title. We haven't even gone past the title. Just, I know what I'm saying here. Just move on." It's like, no, doesn't make sense. Okay, okay. Uh,
I did actually send it to my sister, who's barely in the industry, so that because I wanted to read, like, somebody could come out of college who wants to be a solution engineer and understand it, right, and get the concepts, or
yeah.
somebody who's been doing this for 20 years like me, can get some knowledge out of it, right? So I kind of wanted to do both. And so when she read it, she was like, oh no, I totally got what you were trying to say. There were she said she had to look up some acronyms, so I had to go back in and like fix
Nice.
that.
So, do you think that salespeople would benefit from this book?
I think my second book would be a sales book. Yeah. Because I
So
think
here. Go ahead. Go.
I do think that there is a need for it to be, because if the solutions engineers are doing it, that's great. But if the sales reps aren't buying into it, then it probably won't be as successful.
So in my head, the thing, I've been in sales for almost 4 years, and I've been like, I got shifted out. I didn't choose to be in sales. I have to do all these disclaimers because for all the SEs out there, I didn't choose this, but I'm good at it. And I've noticed that I'm good at it because I still use like sales engineer principles.
Yeah.
So I feel like any book that's dedicated for sales engineers would benefit the salespeople greatly if they just
Oh, yeah.
take the time to read that and not look down upon it's
Yeah.
a sales engineering book. Okay. Question number 2, Sherri. What would you consider is your superpower?
Oh, my superpower. Well, I believe all SEs are superheroes, right? They're the ones that go in and they solve all the problems. I think my superpower is probably enabling other folks to feel like they can solve problems. And so much so that for the teams that I've ever worked with, the mantra was, I want you to be wielders of ideas, champions of vision, and masters of influence. And that allows them to be the superhero they want to be in their accounts.
Nice. So I'm going to throw a curveball here. What would your sister say is your superpower?
Being annoying.
Is she older?
No.
No, my older brother would have said that. So, okay. Question number 3. You already mentioned a few books or resources.
Yeah.
But if you were to talk like to that person who's just graduating university and they want to get into sales engineering, is there a specific book you would recommend?
Oh, I don't know. Some of the books that are out there now are pretty outdated, to be honest with you. Like, things change so quickly, and it would. I can't think of any one. Probably,
Let me rephrase that. Let me
probably
rephrase
Naked
that.
Sales would probably
Naked
be one
Sales.
of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a book that you've gifted to your team members more than any other book? Or
Yeah,
at
the
least
Naked
told them
Sales.
to read?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Naked Sales one. I mean, everybody was pretty big into Challenger Sale a few years ago. When I was at Oracle, we gifted those out. But I think the one besides my own, I think the other one would be this, the Naked Sales, because I think it talks to younger people and how they use design thinking to do things, and I think it makes it a little, and it's an easy read, right? It's a short read.
Okay. All right. So we got that covered. The last question of the not so fire round, Sherri, is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Is there a hobby that I'm working on? Well,
Habit.
a habit.
Habit. Yeah.
Oh gosh. I'm trying to be a better speaker. I'm not sure that it's working.
It worked for me today. So if that helps at all.
Well, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I've over the last, I don't know, 20 some years, I've had to do a lot of public speaking, but I never liked it, and I'm trying to get better at it. So I practice a little more. Doing things like this helps get me out of my shell a little bit. Yeah, so probably more practice at public speaking is probably what I've been focused on.
So I guess the follow-up question is, why do you need to get better at public speaking?
Because I hate the sound of my voice, and because I don't think that I'm very good at it. So
Yeah.
I feel like I need to practice it more to get my message across.
Okay, that's good. That's a good reason. All right. Well, we're done with the show. Sherri, if people want to reach out and connect with you, where can they do that?
I have a email address that they can reach out to me on at insightmethodologygroup@gmail.com.
All right, I'm just writing it down so I can put it in the.
Or they can find me on LinkedIn.
I'll put your LinkedIn profile as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, Sherri, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to more conversations.
This was so much fun. I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me be. Thank you for having me on. This was my first podcast, and I hope I hope I did okay.
Hope it's the first of many, because
Yes.
I'm
Thank
pretty
you.
sure you're going to be on many other podcasts.
Fingers crossed.
And that's the end of the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. It is show 311, so the show notes will be at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show 311. Connect with Sherri, learn from her if you can. I don't see why you can't, but I don't like to tell people what to do. If you can, connect with her, learn from her. And that's it for me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the investment that you just put in here, and I hope you got your return on it, and it was worth it. With that, I'm signing off.